So here we are at Ausculum again, beginning of turn 7. The Greeks, using Pyrrhus's pre-move as an elite leader, managed to move a couple of their phalanx units forward and deploy them in line, using archer screens, some of their other units, and most importantly an elephant to drive the cav back. And sort of a combination of arms to manage to deploy their best units. Whether or not this is going to be sufficient, it's hard to tell, because we've already seen that those legions can do a number on the phalanxes. The phalanxes are pretty potent, but they're not all powerful. And we've also seen, these heavy hoplite units turned back. But this is the best I can do at this point, and the terrain's not that bad for them right now, although now that they're actually deployed, it's a little harder. They have an easier time in column. Alright, I'll continue with the turn and see what the Romans can do to put in the way. But right now, like I said, it looks like the Greeks were having a real problem and the Romans have managed to get a lot in the way. But now the Greeks are beginning to deploy their real stuff, and it's going to turn out to be a heavy fight, I think, in this area. Okay, so let's finish up turn 7, and I've got some points here. Looks like 42 for another elephant gone. 55, 85 for the Romans, which is not good for them. Not a good trade-off. Oh, this happened a while ago. Get some Greek cav that pursued some Roman cav off the map. Not a lot changed on the position since last time. Most of the major fighting here had already happened. We just got more Romans moving over. Not a lot routed left. They managed to rally everything, likewise with the Greeks. This was actually a pretty slow turn. Some repositioning going on, especially in the Roman lines. We got troops just kind of sprinkling back and forth, trying to cover things. They would like to get across, because if they don't have anything back here, they lose a bonus. They got to get I think 20 units or 20 strength points. Big difference, right? 20 size points, okay. Yeah. Yeah, there are no strength points really. So yeah, 20 strength points, size points, whatever. They have to get across the river to get any kind of bonus against the Greeks. So if the Greeks don't defend back here, and the Romans can make a good crossing and force, then there's a good chance that the Romans will get the bonus on the setup, and it'll be the same as for this day. Which, as we can see, definitely reduces the Greeks' opportunities to really attack hard. Alright, now, initially I had been thinking I would do there's two forms of deployment for the second day, and I was thinking I would take what I thought would be the more realistic, which is forcing each side to go into a meeting battle, and there's sort of a bonus to the side that wins the die roll. Instead, I think I'm going to go for the instantaneous deployment, not so much because it's easier, in fact not at all because of that, but because I'm thinking that it is actually more historical. It seems very unlikely to me that that the assumption made by the designers that both sides would just withdraw to their camps, and even they express disbelief about it, and then deploy the next day. That just doesn't strike me as at all likely, and what I'm seeing here is this kind of a situation where if this stayed the way it is, the Greeks would probably pull back, stay behind where they were more or less, and the Romans might not want to try to station a defense here, but instead say, look, a nighttime attack would be dangerous and everything. If we pull back to the behind the river line and cede this defensive terrain completely, then we're actually probably more in a safe position overnight. I see that as far more likely than the two armies withdrawing completely to their camps, even if there is evidence that that's what they did. I would guess that the armies did withdraw towards their camps, but left some sort of pickets stationed, and in the case of the Romans, their pickets had pulled back behind the river. Dangerous, perhaps, but anyway. Okay. Beginning of turn 8 here, zooming in on the action again. The main area of the fight. Pyrrhus took his elite action and managed to deploy some more phalanx units. He couldn't get this one into play because there's a zone of control here, and it would have had to stop in column standing there. So he held off on that. He pushed some of the others forward, got into a battle here, and sent some lights up to get them out of the way in part, and they routed successfully, but he didn't manage to push this legionary infantry forward, which he really wanted to do. Without doing that, things get kind of uglier because there's a partially exposed flank here that I don't know how big a deal that's going to be, because this unit would have to attack too, and it would rout. And yeah, it would be painful for the phalanx, there's no question, but I'm not sure it's enough to break one. And got the elephant up here to push the cav back away from the phalanx. Moved some archers up to shoot up. And some additional forces here. Just basically trying to build up a salient here that's large enough that we can just keep pushing onto this more valuable map, so that we're almost guaranteed to be there tomorrow. So I think it's time. We moved a couple Romans back here just to push the line a little harder. See the Greeks pushing forward a little stronger. Maybe too strong. Remember, if they weaken this too much, the Romans can just stream over and get what I'd call a victory in terms of being able to get a better setup for the next day. Get the same setup. But we've come to the point where I think it's time for an ox cart to be used. I'm going to move it up towards this elephant. If it doesn't get driven off by the arrows, well, if the elephant doesn't withdraw, the elephant will take cohesion hits. Now, the rule for this is you roll a die, you double that die, you subtract the tactical quality, and that's how many cohesion hits it takes. I don't think that elephant can withdraw, though, because if it withdraws, then the cav can strike the flank here. So I think we're actually going to get to see one being used. And it was fully successful. It charged up. It took 2 hits from the archers and the screens and javelineers aboard the elephant. It got to fire. It did a hit to the elephant, but using its archers. But it also, and the important thing, rolled an 8 on that die roll. That's 16 minus 7 is 9. That elephant's rampaging. And, well, we'll see what happens. Kind of anticlimactic. The elephant rolled a 3. You follow this little directional arrow here. That'll be that way. Charged right into this Roman cav. Causes it 2 cohesion hits. Second roll, they got a 9, which is sufficient to drive the wedge in. So that elephant's dead. There's no more elephants, so there's no more use for the ox carts. At this point, the Romans are just going to withdraw them, I believe, or try to keep them out of combat, because they're just points. But that means the cav is free to act over here. And as a follow-up, this tribune who ordered the ox cart attack ordered some what turned out to be foolish attacks, mainly because of his location and what he could command. He couldn't reach the main flow of the cav, so he ordered one very weak cav unit, she's over here now, to charge the archers, and they were shot to pieces and routed, and then later when he tried to rally them, he destroyed them. Then he ordered his phalanx, or his legionnaires, to charge the phalanx on the hill. Well, that's horrible. That ended up over on the one column over here a couple of times, actually, because he had to order another one in to try to strengthen this line. But he doesn't want the breach in the line, and that's why he was sending them in there. Why is it so horrible? Well, there's 2 column shifts against you for fighting uphill if all your enemies are uphill, and there's 3 column shifts against you for charging the front of a phalanx. So since the initial table was a 6, it ends up and you know, this is what looking up all these different charts gives you, but you begin to recognize, you know, you don't have to do the calculations every time. Common situations happen, and you really don't have to look them up. Another nice thing, for me at least, is this combat chart is actually very, very gradual, which means a column shift is probably not going to change the effect. 5 column shifts, on the other hand, probably is. Alright, so now we're going to be going back over to the Greek turn. They don't have a lot they can do over here. Mainly they're going to be piddling with their rear end stuff. This is mostly done except for whatever the cav is going to be able to inflict on the Greek flank there because of killing the elephant. Well, a somewhat unimpressive showing by the Roman cav when they hit as well. They drove off the skirmishers, and so the flank is sort of exposed, except there's a cav unit in that location now. And they slammed into a depleted Greek cav that's approximately equal, and managed to bring themselves down to its level, basically, including the effects of the skirmishers routing through them. Alright, well, there's got to be another Roman 3 leader around. There's a bunch of them, and I think I've done all the Greek ones. Okay, so here we are at the end of 8. Got some more points, another 42-point elephant for the Greeks. And 65 for the Romans. The numbers are beginning to look very bad for the Romans. Now let's look at what happened on the field. Well, the only thing left, the Greeks basically double moved using Pyrrhus. They pushed a unit to move further than he would have, taking an extra cohesion hit, to attack one of them cav and send him flying. Kind of put the hoplite in a bad position, which maybe wasn't worth it, but I felt like I had to try to stabilize the line there. There's still this gap right here, which is painful from my standpoint. I've got some heavies that I might be able to fill with that. Otherwise, things are pretty much stuck there. The exciting thing is, this guy, the other consul, sent some Velites across. He's going to try to see if he can influence that die roll by bringing maybe a double legion into play across here, and just see, hey, can the Greeks handle it, you know, or will they just be trading losses there too? Well, unfortunately he didn't get a continuation, so he couldn't try to rally those units, and now there's a couple big cav units that can perhaps disperse them, which will not be at all good for the Romans. It was a risk. He was a 5 leader. There was a pretty decent chance that he'd be able to rally them. He also brought an actual line into play up here so that he can come across with that. But without the Velites to provide any kind of screen, that's kind of risky. So he may just take his licks and his routes and try to bring his troops back together. There's no way the Greeks can come back across just because they chase some Velites. Alright, well, that's our situation. And the Triarii are still standing firm back here, which is important in this one because if they even move, that's a penalty to the next day's die roll. Up it goes.